we have no real media in this state. Well, you have us.
It's really time for a parent revolution.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
That's what the left did with COVID in so many different ways.
Wind energy, especially offshore wind, is a big loser and just another government boondoggle.
Like, what's going on?
People are fed up. They lied to us then. They're lying to us now. They're assaulting our families.
What we do is we look at the lies of the left that they keep pushing out, that America doesn't work for black people. That is not true.
They want to now monopolize truth and say, truth is only what we say truth is. Damn the data, damn the science.
The key with science is it always needs to serve objective thinking. They just call anyone who challenges them a science deniers.
They're evil.
Shut up or we'll cancel you.
What we're going through is a cultural revolution.
This is big, and this is how change begins.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Ocean State Current Command Bunker. Now playing from in the dugout, number 37, Mike Stenhouse.
Supporters of the concept of transgender children in schools say if we can only save one life. But what if we lose one life? What would they say then? Today, the heart-wrenching story of a Rhode Island mom whose daughter was secretly transitioned by school officials and who 2 years later attempted suicide. Joining me in just moments will be that mom, a courageous woman, to tell you in her own words her full and tragic story of what happened with her daughter and her family, a story that never would have happened if the Rhode Island Department of Education did not put mandates on school districts that they adopt Rhode Island Department of Education's woke and dangerous, as you'll hear, pro-transgender policies. Hey, welcome to In the Dugout. Your host, Mike Stenhouse here. This is going to be quite a story. And I want to direct this to public officials and others. Angelica Infante Green, Commissioner of Rhode Island Education, if you care, you will listen to this story. Attorney General Nerona, if you care to save lives, you will listen to this story. Governor McKee, if you care, you should listen to this story. Members of the General Assembly, if you care, you must listen to this story. School district officials and teachers, if you care, despite what you've been told, listen to this story. Students, if you care about your fellow students and classmates, listen to this story. And school committee members who make these policies, if you really care about the students you are pledged to care for, not some political agenda, you have to listen to this story and understand that living in the left's neverland of make-believe can be a very dangerous place indeed. Angelica Infante Green, Peter Nerona, Dan McKee, General Assembly, elected officials, senators and representatives, school district officials and teachers, other students, school committee members especially. It matters what you do. Lives will be lost. Now, our organization, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, our law center, 3 great volunteer attorneys, have discovered, well, not discovered, but we recognize that Rhode Island's related transgender laws, whether it has to do with pronoun use, whether it has to do with bathrooms, whether it has to do with locker rooms or boys and girls sports, whether it has to do with transitioning or anything else related to all that, that Rhode Island and most school districts in this state have policies, laws, and regulations that are now completely out of whack with federal Title IX laws, with recent federal court rulings, and with recent presidential executive orders. We understand you are between a rock and a hard place legally. Either way you go, there's legal peril. Watch the interview I conducted with attorney Giovanni Ciccione just yesterday. So when you're between a rock and the hard place, just do the right thing. If you care. Do you care? This is not about the political agenda of affirming one's gender. What we're talking about here is denying one's God-given gender. This is gender denying nonsense. This story you are about to hear from this mom proves it. Angelica Infante Green, Peter Nerona, Dan McKee, General Assembly members, school districts and teachers and school district officials, students, school committee members. If you care, you will comply with federal law and rescind all public policies that equate gender preference with traditional, legal, and common sense understanding of sex when it comes to legal protections under the law. This mom is now a plaintiff in an official complaint before Rhode Island Superior Court. Because of the sensitive nature of this, she has filed as a Jane Doe to protect her identity. So to promote her anonymity, for the time being, we have altered her voice and we have blurred the video. Perhaps someday in the future, you'll be able to meet Jane Doe with her full name, with clear video, and with her own voice. But for now, we respect Jane Doe's privacy, and you are about to hear from her attorney and herself. Let's meet them. Okay, so joining me now is that mom of that daughter in a Rhode Island public school system. And we want to welcome, for the first time to hear her story, Jane Doe. Jane, sorry to invite you under these circumstances, but welcome to In the Dugout.
Thank you.
And joining her as a veteran of our show and a terrific private attorney in our state, Gregory Piccirilli. Attorney Piccirilli, welcome back.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon.
So we're gonna have Jane tell her story, her family story. Attorney Piccirilli will be here to kind of referee and make sure we keep within where we need to be legally and to tell the legal background where appropriate. But I want to ask this first to Jane Doe. This has got to be unbelievably emotional for you. And a lot of families we've seen throughout the country don't want to come forward and speak out. Why did you choose to agree to be a plaintiff and to start speaking out about what happened in your family?
It is definitely an emotional battle. Every day is different. Some days are easier than others. But primarily the reason for speaking out is because somebody needs to. It's taken me a while to get to a point where I feel like I can speak out. And even that is a little nerve-wracking at this point. I'm still deep in the throes of all of this. But there are so many people being affected, myself included. I was one before it really was in my face that believed these weren't things that were taking place, right? We feel that school is safe, that when we send our kids, they're going to get a meaningful education and that type of scenario, to later learn when you're in the throes of it that that is not necessarily the case.
Wow.
So awareness, bringing awareness as somebody that was naive, and I will openly admit that in the beginning, to wow, this is my reality right now.
Take us back roughly a year ago.
When your world was turned upside down and you learned two things, that your daughter had attempted to commit suicide and that behind your back, her school was aiding her and encouraging her to transition, ostensibly anyway, from a female to a male. I mean, tell us how you felt a year ago.
I don't even know if I could label those emotions. There was definitely shock. There was frustration, which I still feel frustration. It's like a grieving process almost, right? Because you go through all the different steps of grieving, and sometimes you go through them and then you have to double back because new things come up. I was very frustrated because essentially the school was teaching my kid that it was okay to live a double life, to essentially have two personalities, right? Because you're going to be one person in school and we're allowing you to socially transition in school, but we're having you hide this at home. So then you have to come home and you have to be somebody else. So that double lifestyle, that split personality, that dual, whatever you want to call it, that essentially is what I feel led to the suicide attempt, because that's a heavy burden for anybody to carry, let alone a teenager who is battling hormones, who is battling everyday life, who is battling all these other things that are happening around them. And now the school is telling them, well, you have to kind of keep this secret. So I feel as though that is what led to the attempted suicide. It was a pressure, like a pressure cooker, and I'm keeping this all in, and I need to release it somehow.
Before I bring in Attorney Piccirilli, I just want to follow up on something you said a little earlier. You expect when you send your children to school that it will be a safe place for them. We hear the argument all the time that if we allow kids to transition in schools and encourage them there, that that's for their best safety. We hear it. If we can save just one life, it's all worth it. We almost lost one life because of this Rhode Island Department of Education regulation and because of your daughter's school district's policies and encouragement. Are schools a safe place for our kids, Jane Doe?
Do I think so?
Yeah, right.
No. No. And if I had the ability to homeschool my children and pull my children out of public school, I would. I would, especially after this scenario. But as a single working mother, that is not something I am able to do. So that's where they have us backed into a corner.
We're going to get back to your story in just a second. Attorney Piccirilli, as we have, and again, for our viewing audience here, if you go to rifreedom.org/Title IX, using the IX, we started and we have a kind of a chronological chronicling, if you would, of all the efforts of our law center with regard to the Interscholastic League, the Rhode Island Department of Education, There's petitions, there's letters you've sent, there's the court complaint, which we'll get to in just a second. But Attorney Piccirilli, I would like you to comment. We filed before we met Jane Doe. We filed, our law center with you in the lead, filed a appeal to RIDE to repeal its transgender regulation going way back to 2018. Now we filed an appeal to Rhode Island Superior Court and have since added Jane Doe as a plaintiff. Just update us on where all that stands.
Right. So when we as you mentioned, Mike, we try to get RIDE to voluntarily rescind their regulation, given a couple of things. One, I don't think they ever had the authority to issue the regulation the way they did, because it was based upon a statute in Rhode Island that specifically references discrimination on the basis of sex, and sex does not include gender in the definition. RIDE refused to do that, so we filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, with the U.S. Department of Ed, and that's pending. That didn't seem to get any response from RIDE either. In fact, they just doubled down and they went to the Attorney General, Peter Nerona, and got him to write a letter basically threatening every school district in the state that if they rescinded their transgender policy, which was written as a result of the regulation, that they might face legal action from the state. So that's the landscape. So now, in some regards, school districts are kind of stuck in the middle, being threatened by the state, being threatened by the federal government. We made a decision to go to court, and there's a procedure under the Administrative Procedures Act to get the court to invalidate the regulation.
But we've now added since our first letter, we've now added a plaintiff, Jane Doe,
right,
to the case, which in theory, I mean, one, we're basing it like on a false representation of state law. Now, that same false representation of state law that RIDE was guilty of, that we believe they were guilty of, still exists. But now we can actually show some family was harmed by this. Do you feel like that gives our case and complaint a lot more heft?
Yeah, that's very important to our complaint, because that's the court will look at what harm this regulation has caused. And
so that's important, actual
very,
harm.
very important. Yeah. And we talked about, that we know there are parents in this state. We know that are going through what Jane is going through. That what parents in Jane's position are going through is so traumatic, is so stressful to them, that I think most of these parents are just frozen. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to seek help from. And Jane has this incredible strength of conviction to be willing to put herself forward here.
Yes.
So that's, she's really blazing the trail for what we hope to be some other parents who might be willing to come forward too,
All right, let's get into some of the why you'll soon hear, everybody, why Jane Doe is so courageous in stepping forward. Jane Doe, let's go back just to set the scene. So apparently your daughter in 8th grade, 3 years ago, expressed to school officials that she would like to start transitioning. Is that correct?
So yes, but it started with a RIDE survey. So RIDE is having RIDE is having students fill out surveys. It asks demographic questions like, do you come from a single parent household? Do your parents use drugs? Do your parents drink alcohol? Those type of questions.
Social and emotional SEL, right? Social and emotional learning, that SEL junk that schools are pushing, right?
Yes. So then it goes into asking the children if they do drugs, if they drink alcohol, do they have unprotected sex? Do they do these kinds of things? So these are questions that they're asking middle school children. And then it goes into gender questions. It's asking questions. Do you feel like a girl? Do you feel like a boy? Do you feel like this? Do you identify as that? Do you identify as this? These were surveys that I didn't even learn were taking place until everything imploded last year.
Just yes or no, Greg, are these kinds of questions and questionnaires that we've talked about on this show for years, are they supposed to get parents opt-in on those legally?
Yeah, they're supposed to be opt-in. Most districts think they can do it the reverse and have it as an opt-out.
All right. So
And there's
right
also
away,
this-
there could be a
there's also-
violation right there. There could
Yeah.
be a violation right there, right?
Yeah, there's also a question of whether, how anonymous these surveys really are,
Yeah. All right.
and what they do
All
with
right.
the information, but.
So back to Jane. So, all right. So that survey, I think you're implying basically opened doors to thoughts in your daughter's head that she probably never would have had before, were it not for them putting it in writing right in front of her. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I believe so. That's my genuine belief of it.
You had never heard her talk about any of this before?
No. And I'm kind of like a Stone Age parent. Like, I don't allow my children on social medias, like any of that stuff, because there's so much in your face. So I try to keep my children as children for as long as possible, because let's face it, they grow fast anyway. They're going to pick things up in school, but there's so much more in your face, especially when it comes to social media. But that's why, like, these ride surveys, that's the other thing. They ask questions about socials and things of that nature. But I feel that they are using these surveys to prey on certain children. They look at, what these surveys are saying, and these are the students that they essentially prey on for their agenda.
Do you think it's a form of grooming, as they?
I think that's a fair statement.
All right. All right. Just from a timeline point of view, we'll go back and discuss some of this. So, was it eighth grade? She had that survey. Eighth grade, she started to transition without your knowing.
Yes.
10th grade, last April is when she attempted suicide.
Yes.
And now here we are 1 year after that. All right.
Correct.
All right. But let's go further back. When she was just 5 years old, and this is in the complaint written by Attorney Piccirilli that you authorized, Jane, it says here, well, I'll show it. Let's just show the complaint so everyone can see. You don't have to believe me. When the plaintiff's daughter was 5 years old, she was the victim of sexual abuse by a family member.
Correct.
That's got to, it says later on, as a result of the sexual assault, plaintiff's daughter has suffered mental health issues, including gender dysphoria. So before the gender dysphoria was become known to you, did you understand or know or believe that your daughter had some mental health issues?
I knew that they would come in waves. You know what I mean? Like any traumatic scenario, even as adults, when we face trauma, we have waves. We have good times, and then we have where something triggers an emotion, a feeling of what we've gone through, right? What's traumatized us, whatever that experience was, and it creates an issue. So throughout her life, we went through stages of mental health help. You did therapy and all of these different things. She did intense therapy for almost 2 years after the sexual assault. That was crucial. And then when she said that she was feeling okay and she didn't want it anymore, then we put an end to it. Because why are we going to keep reopening a wound if she's feeling okay? And so we went through waves, and that's normal with life. That's normal human response. But do I think that what is going on, what is being pushed, triggered more? Absolutely.
All right. So none of us are psychologists or mental health professionals, I don't think, but we're all parents and we're all human beings, and either one of you, we'll start with Jane, then Greg, whatever you think. It's often stated by those who are who well, by many, I won't even say it's only one side of the issue, that it seems like the children who are most susceptible to this transgender phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, are those who have some mental health issues or are on the autistic spectrum, and that they're more susceptible to what you mentioned, Jane, as being preyed upon by the advocates of this transgender agenda. Do you think there, just from your personal experience, not as a professional, but do you believe that children with these issues are more susceptible?
I do.
Greg, are you aware of any research or studies or legal on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's Mike, it's a pretty amazing situation. I think, and I think that most people have no idea of what's happened in the field of child psychiatry over the last 10 years and how these types of situations are dealt with. Child suffers sexual abuse, assault, especially from a family member, especially a young girl. And then as they approach puberty, they have, concerns about how they're looked at in the world. And instead of dealing with that root cause of of that trauma that they went through, the transgender movement has pushed child psychiatrists to not even question the onset of this behavior, of what causes these thoughts. They're
If I
told,
understand, we have a state law that
Yeah.
bars any funding to any psychiatrist who tries to detransition someone or talk
Yeah,
them up, right? We have a law,
they
don't
try
we?
they try to compare it to called conversion therapy.
Right,
You
right.
know, when they try to, if you're trying to not convert someone from having homosexual feelings. What happens to students that they try to transition is completely different from somebody coming out and claiming that they're gay or lesbian. They're told, well, if you just tell us what you are, if you're a boy or girl, we won't even ask you why you feel that way. We won't even try to get to the root cause of what trauma you might have suffered or what issues you might
Right.
have.
Can I touch on that for
Yeah,
1 second?
Jane, yeah.
Okay. So this, I'm so glad you brought that up, Greg, because when my daughter was in the hospital, I did mention the abuse, and I said, I feel like she's having these feelings because of what was suffered. Like, this is something that we need to be addressed. And I was told that they weren't there to address old wounds, that they weren't there to get to the root cause, that they were there for the immediate, which was the gender dysphoria and why she felt that way. So even at the hospital, they allowed my child to call herself a boy and use a boy's name and try to tell me that I needed to refer to her as a boy and by her boy's name when I went to visit.
Just think of the gross negligence, first by school officials, then by any of the mental health professionals she worked with before or after or during her transition and attempted suicide, then at the hospital. I mean, that's what I was getting at. These mental health issues, whether it's autistic or not, from a trauma, the assault like your daughter suffered when she was young through the sexual assault, it's like a pre-existing condition. And if you like a COVID analogy, now something comes in, your immune system, you're weakened, and you're more susceptible to being infected. I've had psychologists on my show in years past who say, like a COVID, this LGBTQ transgender is an emotional contagion. It does spread. It can infect other people. And if you're weaker emotionally or immune, it can spread. All right. So I want to move on, and this might be really difficult for you, Jane, to talk about, but I want you to take me back to last April. Describe where you were, how you were informed, and what you came to learn about your daughter's attempted suicide.
So we were home. I was home with all three of my children. My youngest was sleeping.
Now you're divorced, right?
I am. I've been divorced for quite a while.
Okay.
So my daughter was cutting herself in her room, and then came out to the kitchen and attempted to stab herself in my kitchen. So immediately I packed up my sons and I brought my sons to somebody else, and I brought my child immediately to the hospital.
So it happened right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, fortunately, she did not get the knife into her skin, and there was no wound, but it was definitely, there was a plan. There was malicious intent at that point. Had I not been where I was in my house, things could have been very different. But yes.
Wow. What a and your sons, who I believe are younger siblings to your daughter, they witnessed this as well?
Well, like I said, my youngest was sleeping and my middle one was like busy, so it was shielded enough to where they didn't realize what was going on. But then, my youngest wakes up in a different house. Mom's not home. I was at the hospital at that point for, I think I was at Hasbro for approximately 36 hours, without seeing my sons. So it didn't just affect me and my daughter, it affected my sons, because literally in the blink of an eye, everything changed.
When and how did you learn that a lot of this might have been caused by her trauma and emotional distress over her transitioning?
Well, once I was at the hospital, because that's when things started to, and then, the hospital was, oh, well, we need to, they're 16, we need to speak to them. And then when the doctor came back to talk to me, the doctor started to refer to my daughter as a boy. And I'm like, okay, but that's a girl. Like, that's my daughter. And they were using different pronouns. Oh, well, we need to do what makes them feel comfortable. No. I'm telling you, like, that's my daughter. And this is where I see it coming from. But every time I said this is where I feel it's coming from, this is what I feel is causing these deep-seated feelings, I was told I was wrong. That wasn't it. I was made out to be the crazy one, the unsupportive one. At one point, I was told that I was unsafe and unfit, because I would not affirm any of them.
We've discussed, we know other states do it. We've discussed when Rhode Island will try to do it. And Greg, we're concerned that it won't be long in this state until a parent or a family who doesn't support their child, their minor child, transitioning, that Department of DCYF or the department could come right in and take their children away, just like Jane Doe said, claiming the mom or the dad or the parents are unfit.
It is it's a scary prospect out there. It's happening in other states. There's going to be an attempt by the federal government to put a stop to this, but these are real serious threats that parents are facing, and it's
All right, so
it's just
it's more than a
compounded.
threat. It's more than a threat in Jane Doe's case because it happened. It's not
Right.
just theory. It
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
And just yes or no on this. I don't want to get into it. It's not the purpose of this, but it seems like given that gross negligence of hospital officials, school officials, mental health professionals she may have worked with, that there's some severe legal liability to one or all of those entities. Agreed?
Potentially.
Potentially, right. All right. Jane Doe.
Yes, sir.
It's hard for me to talk about because I can't believe what I don't even know how you can feel about all this as a mom who's caught in this absolute not just for
Nightmare.
nightmare. Yes, exactly the word. Your daughter. Well, let me ask this: do you know why? What drove her to the point of cutting herself and attempting to stab herself? That attempted suicide. Do you know what the final straw was? Do you have any idea?
I don't. Um, like I stated earlier, I feel that it was the whole the dual
Right.
uh, personality thing. Like you can be this way at school and then you got to go home and kind of hide it. And I think that I feel that that is essentially what caused that pressure cooker to blow. Because you're teaching kids how to live a double lifestyle. Um, when at one point in time that was deemed like a mental health crisis when people were living a double lifestyle or a dual personality. That was a mental health problem. And now they are condoning it, they are teaching it, they are allowing it. And that is an issue in and of itself. That is a problem.
For two reasons. Like you said, the stress of living a dual life. I'm in school and I'm pretending I'm this, and I'm home and I'm pretending I'm the person I was born to be, but pretending not to be. You're right. It's got to weigh on a young, immature, developing mind. But then there's the question of parental rights. I mean, whose child is it to make these decisions? The schools or the parents? And I think we all also know that question. But I think it also goes to, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this, Jane, and then Greg. There's also the question of parental notification. So when you're not notifying a parent that their child is going through this stressful gender dysphoric phase, it's creating that dual life pressure. They're teaching their kids to ignore and not rely on their family, instead on school officials who don't really give a hoot about them. They just give a hoot about an agenda. So the whole system is rigged against the parents and the kids.
Yes.
I believe. Your thoughts, Jane?
I couldn't agree with you more. I agree. That it is. And, you know, it came to a head and I ended up asking some people and, I was basically told that they're not allowed to talk about it. That if they were to reach out to me about things, that their jobs were on the line because they're not allowed. And that's a problem too. So now you have teachers that are not with this agenda, that see the harm it's creating, that want to be able to notify, but can't. because they're told that they will lose their jobs if they reach out or speak out against what is taking place.
So think about that, Attorney Piccirilli, from a legal point of view. And I don't think this is in your complaint, but it might show up somewhere else. So we have teachers and school officials not allowed to notify a parent, mental health officials. We have psychologists who are not allowed to assist a child. They might have discovered, in this case, it would have been easily discoverable, the trauma she had at 5 years old of the sexual abuse as sort of a pre-existing condition and as the core problem. I mean, we're dealing in a pretend false world. Greg, how can this be legal?
Mike, the lens to which the people who are pushing this agenda have had tried to subvert and invert and just basically torture common sense and also what the legal frameworks have been for years. You see it in Title IX, for example, with Title IX. Title IX was very clearly enacted to prevent discrimination on the basis of sex, to help young girls who were being discriminated against because they didn't have fair access to things like sports. And that was completely perverted to allow boys to subvert young girls' ability to play sports. And as I point out in the complaint, at least the judges who reviewed what the prior administration was trying to do with Title IX, it ended up in the U.S. Supreme Court, and all 9 justices, including the justice, the newest justice who couldn't define what a woman is when she was asked in Congress, even she agreed that Title IX, when it talks about sex, does not mean gender. So again, and the whole basis of the Rhode Island regulation was this perverted concept of what sex means, and you take that to the next level. There's a statute, a federal statute called FERPA, the Family Education Privacy Rights Act. FERPA has been around for 40, 50 years. It's very clear. Rhode Island has its own version of it. It's very clear that parents have a right to the educational records of their students. They have the right, unfettered right, to know what's going on with their child in school. They've tried to use that statute to say, no, it's the student that has the privacy right. So they try to use that to say that the parent doesn't have the privacy right, the student does. In the statute itself, it says the rights of the parents revert to the child when the child reaches the age of majority, 18. When the child is under 18, they don't have it. It is an absurd concept to say that a statute that's intended to give parent rights is being used to say that the parents don't have rights. That's the kind of perverted way that these people are interpreting these statutes. It is beyond frustrating.
And again, it's not just theory. It's happening right now to Jane Doe. With you have asked for the full educational, medical, even if that includes psychological records of Jane's daughter, and the school district is claiming, other than what we gave you about her grades and attendance, basically, there are no other records. And you say what?
That is not logically possible. You don't go about changing a student's name on the official records. You don't go about addressing this situation about, are we going to inform the parent or not, without having some record of it. So I think it's an absurd position.
Yeah, but beyond that, Jane, you have since found out, or I don't know if it was before the suicide attempt, so you can clarify here whether it was just after she started, after she started transition or before. But there is the Rhode Island, many Rhode Island schools have a kind of child psychology partner. I think it's called Thunder Mist. I don't know, but and sometimes it's embedded in school, sometimes it's outside. But your daughter was consulting with Thunder Mist child psychologist. Is that true?
Yes.
Before and after her transitioning, or just after?
Yes. Before and after. And
So
then
they would keep records, wouldn't they, of meetings?
one would think.
Greg, and would
Yeah,
those
and
records be also available to a parent?
they should be. They're being used in the schools to make decisions. And the school's answer is, well, that's a separate, that's separate from us.
All right, so that's another legal issue here. All right. Wow. All right, and Greg, just to affirm, I should say, you're also a school district solicitor. You represent a couple of school districts in our state. And you know that this issue is more than just, what do we do with bathrooms, boys and girls bathrooms, or vice versa? What do we do with mandated preferred pronoun usage, boys and girls sports teams? This issue of parental notification is also something that every school district has to have a policy on. And as far as you know, and I know you don't know universally every school district, is there any school district that you're aware of in this state that does have a proper parental notification policy?
I won't speculate as to what every district has. I think.
But do you know of one that does?
I think the majority of districts adopted what RIDE was pushing them to adopt, which was what certain advocacy groups were pushing RIDE to have school districts adopt.
Right.
And a central feature of that, and it's because it's laid out very elaborately in some of these policies. The policy in this case, the policy in the other 6 districts that we're dealing with, all have a very lengthy section about how they deal with parental notification or not having that. They're supposed to have teams. Mental health professionals are supposedly on these teams to meet with the with other staff members and meet with the student to see whether or not the student wants to tell the parent or not. Some of the districts, Mike, have policies that say even if the student wants to tell the parent, that the district retains the right not to override even the student.
Wow. All right. All right. So in your complaint, you mentioned that because of RIDE's policies and regulations that this happened to Jane Doe's daughter. I want to go back to Jane. So that's basically the basis of your complaint. Jane, why do you think your daughter did not feel comfortable talking with you about this back when she was in 8th grade and first started having these thoughts?
I don't know. Maybe because we're a Christian family. Maybe because, I mean, I have strong beliefs on these things. These are conversations. Now, listen, I have nothing against homosexuality, and this is a conversation I had with my kid. Do you feel like you need to change your gender because potentially you're homosexual? And that's harder. And to that I was told no. But I mean, I've always kind of kept an open relationship with my kids. I've always felt as though my kids could tell me things. My sons tell me everything. I don't know why, honestly, things were so different with my daughter. It very well could be because the school was saying you can't do this or you shouldn't do this, because we definitely hit a wall where the communication began to decrease. And when I would ask questions, my daughter would kind of get angry, or I would get the, I'm fine, nothing's wrong, you're crazy. What do you mean I'm crazy? I'm your mom and I'm noticing changes and I'm asking about these changes. So what do you mean I'm crazy?
Was this
Um,
before or after the suicide attempt?
some of it started before, so while it was still in the hiding phase, um, and then since the suicide attempt, she's kind of just shut me out altogether since the hospitalizations.
We're going to get to that in a second, but in the complaint, it says you suffered harm and continue to suffer harm. I want to talk about some of the harm you continue to suffer, because what you suffered in the past, being kept out of your daughter's life, seeing your daughter attempt suicide, that's obvious. You also had a job
I did.
in that same school district, correct?
Correct.
And when you took time off under what you thought was the law for Family Leave Act to care for your daughter who had just attempted suicide, was trying to recover, trying to get rehab, you took some time off to care for your daughter and they fired you?
So they sent a letter that stated that I had abandoned my job. And that was it. That I no
Greg, is
longer
that kosher?
had a position because I had abandoned my job.
I don't want to spend much time on this, but Greg, is that an issue as well?
Well, we're looking into that.
Potentially.
I'd rather not
Potentially.
comment more. I'd rather not comment more.
All right, potentially, right? Okay, I'll say potentially. All right. Now, let's go back to your daughter. You talked about communication breaking down a little bit since the suicide attempt, since it's now out in the open. Did your daughter decide to continue with her transition?
As far as I know, I don't know that I'm unaware. We'll say that if there's been any sort of medical steps taken, if there's any hormones or anything being used at the moment. But she has chosen to go where she is affirmed, where she's being told that she's a boy and they call her by a boy's name. So that's where
So you continue to suffer harm because she's no longer living with you, because you don't affirm her transition.
No, because I feel that there's a deeper issue that needs to be addressed than gender dysphoria, and I think that when that deeper issue is addressed, she will feel differently, and that apparently makes me crazy. So,
well, then call me crazy too. So do you have any communication right now with your daughter?
minimal.
In a normal way, even that minimal, would that at all be normal mother-daughter kind of relationship? Or is it very stressed?
It's definitely a stress scenario.
Is she aware that you're speaking out? Is she aware of the complaint that you were a plaintiff in?
No.
Now, even though we're protecting your anonymity here, I mean, it may get around. Do you think it could cause even further tension?
Potentially it could. And, but at this point, I've already lost. I've already lost. I've lost a job. I've lost immense amount of things. I've lost my relationship with my daughter. I've lost my daughter both to this gender dysphoria and to this whole situation. So at this point, I kind of don't have anything else to lose, but everything to gain back. Hopefully one day my daughter will realize, and hopefully things will change. At least at this point, she'll say, well, at least mom never stopped fighting for me, because that's one thing I will always do is fight for my children. So hopefully she will see this as me fighting for her, and not it, creating more of an issue.
Families have problems all the time. unfortunately too many times. But it's got to be especially disturbing that you lost your daughter temporarily, almost her life, almost forever, but at least now from a relationship point of view, knowing that it was the government, knowing that it was school officials, knowing that it was a corrupt, agenda-driven system that instigated all this, beginning with that survey, school officials, mental health officials. They robbed you of your daughter, in my view. You didn't lose her. They took her, in my view, from you. You say what?
Yeah. I guess that put a different perspective on it for me. But yeah, I think that's definitely a fair statement. Because it is definitely a coercion of kids in this scenario.
Greg, as an attorney, I mean, can there be any more obvious harm?
So many times I tell people, could be school officials, could be just people that try to explain to them how these things are happening. And almost invariably you get, this is not happening. Come on. They don't believe it. They don't, they just don't understand the impact that this has on some families. And then you try to give them an outline, the scenario of what's actually happening. And they just look at you in stunned disbelief. They can't process that this is happening. So yeah, the harm is real. People are hiding from it. They're afraid to be called transphobic or some other name. And so it just gets allowed to continue and fester. And I think in some cases, children like Jane's daughter come around and end up, I've represented, I think Mike, as we've talked about this, I've represented, what they call themselves detransitioners, people, young girls that have regretted going through this. That's, again, people claim that's a very small number. It's actually quite a big number. 90% or more of young girls that go through this, by the time they reach, mid-20s or so, have detransitioned.
Right. And a major, and again, I want to go back to their claim. Well, if we can just save one life by creating a safe and welcoming environment for all students, regardless of their identity, when statistics and major research now show that the prevalence of suicide is greater among those who try to go through a transition, falsely, despite the false claims. But if we can just save one life, but in this case, Jane Doe, we almost lost one life. What do you think they would say to that?
I don't think they would know what to say. I don't think that they would know how to respond to that, to be honest. Or they would blame it on something else. They would pass the buck and point the finger in another direction. Because one thing that I have come to realize in this situation is they don't like to take accountability.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Let's look at this end part of your complaint. Attorney Piccirilli says the commissioner's regulation, the one you're trying to repeal, interferes and threatens to interfere with legal rights and privileges of plaintiff as the natural parent of her children. And then you go on to say, because that regulation A school district in Rhode Island was forced to keep secret from plaintiff that her daughter wanted to transition, resulting in an attempted suicide. If that isn't a condemnation of a law or a regulation or a ruling, I mean, I don't know what more there could be. Let me ask you this way. Are you still, if this case may take, you're looking for an immediate injunction, you've got a hearing coming up soon, but are you still looking for more plaintiffs if there are families and parents out there who may be in the same boat?
Yes, absolutely. And Mike, as you know, I mean, we're not, your center is the one who's, funding this, managing this, these parents, we're not expecting, this isn't done as a normal, situation where you would be charging a client type of situation. So if that was a concern for parents, obviously we want to make that clear. But more importantly, I'm hoping that some parents out there that are maybe reluctant to do anything will look at Jane here as an inspiration. Because I know there are more parents out there, and I know that they're afraid of coming forward. And hopefully, if they see this, they'll, maybe they can talk to Jane. Maybe we could put them in touch, and we can walk through this with them and see if they want to help. I mean, it's it's like maybe this is a bad analogy, but it's like being a rape victim.
Yeah.
How many? I don't want to testify in court. Well, what if he does it again to somebody else? And you have to have the courage to come forward with something like that. So we would hope that that happens.
Well, thank you. I know you got hearings and discussions and conferences coming up. We wish you good luck legally. I want to give the final word to Jane Doe. Jane, I want you to talk to those parents that Greg just mentioned, other parents who, someone in their family going through something similar, maybe they're hesitant to speak out or reach out to their own child. Given your suffering and the harm you've gone through, just take as long as you like, talk to those parents out there right now.
Just know that you're not alone. Know that the wool could have been pulled over your eyes just as much as it was mine, but we have to come together. We have to speak out. We have to fight for our kids. I know that they say that, we're crazy when we speak out, but nobody's going to fight for our kids the way that we are going to fight for our kids. And I'll fight for your kid the way I'm fighting for my kid, because somebody needs to fight for the kids. These kids are our future, and at this rate, it's looking shaky. So we need to fight for the children. So reach out, speak out. Don't be scared. You're not alone. And I wish everybody the best. I hope that nobody else is in my situation. Unfortunately, I know that is not true, but hopefully this sheds light, opens your eyes, gives you a little bit of hope. That's all.
Thank you, Jane. Greg, I think you said it best, and now we know why you called her so courageous at the very top of this interview. We need other courageous parents out there to step forward and know, as there are attorneys like Greg, there are moms and parents in a similar boat like Jane that you can consult with and refer to. There are shows like ours that you can, if you choose, you can raise awareness about your situation so that it doesn't happen to somebody else. I can't thank you enough, Greg, for continuing to fight for the rights of citizens in Rhode Island. You are an absolute hero to me in this state and a hero to many. So I thank you for that.
No, the heroes are the parents.
True. true. And Jane, you are a heroine of the highest magnitude. We wish you Godspeed and good luck to you, to your daughters. We didn't get to talk about the effect this has had on your sons, and we'll talk about that maybe another time, but I'm sure it hasn't been easy on them. So, Jane, thank you so much for being courageous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you to our audience. This has been the most emotional interview I have ever conducted, I can tell you that. It's been an issue we've covered extensively over the years, and I think we're going to win this fight, but it's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot more brave people and a lot more smart attorneys before we figure it all out. So, until next game, Mike Stenhouse out. See you then.